I laid all the books out today in a way so that all the children could see their book at once.
Right there.
And it was wonderful having them all go over and see their book. I think it was a way to highlight and value what an important piece of work it is that they've done. If they're getting it back in bits and pieces, it doesn't allow them to have that bigger picture of what they've accomplished, the kind of this huge journey that they've been on. This is really the thread of what we were doing is now in these books that they're taking. And it falls into three basic parts. So the first part relates to what we were talking about earlier, and that's about the bees. We did experiments with all the honey that they brought in. We did huge amounts of taste tests. They were graphing who liked what. This is one of the pieces of writing that they ended up doing. They had the question, why do all the honeys taste different? And their answers were fantastic. They ranged from, quite straightforward, they come from different flowers, they're coming from different cities, to some really interesting transitional language, kids saying things like, maybe it's because, like this child did. In fact, this one says, maybe because the nectar from a purple flower tastes different. And you can hear the sophistication of how he's thinking about that question. Then we went back and looked again. How do bees make honey? When the bees get the nectar, they go back to the hive and barf it into another bee's mouth. Then they make it thicker by flapping their wings at it. Then they cover it in wax. Huge amount of information just in that one little bit. And I'm really looking back at how it compares to their first ideas here. And even looking at the development of their representational drawing comes out in this, as well as how they use their drawing to illustrate their thinking, which is something that they get better at the more often they're asked to do it. So the next part in their booklet is really about snails. Their initial drawings about snails, some of their first questions. They were really curious about those things that were coming out of the tops of the snail's head and why they were there. What did they do? They were wondering if they were for fighting or defending themselves, and if not, how did they do it? So that became one of their first pieces of writing. Very often we expect that word because to be part of an answer. It's never good enough just to say an answer. We want them to explain their reasoning, so we really just embed that. That becomes an implicit expectation. Sometimes explicit if they haven't done it. We'll say, oh, why do you think that? And then they'll say, because. When the kids started having enough experience with the snails, we did ask them to, again, just draw us a picture and then tell me about this, tell me about this. Give me what do you think about snails? Everything you think you know at this point. I think the whole body makes the slime. It eats with its tongue. It grinds up the food. The tongue has teeth. That's information they got from some readings we did in books. And then this page is about the newsletter that goes home as a school. We send home a few pages from each class that goes home about what we've been doing over the last 6 weeks or 2 months, and the kids really wanted to talk about the snails. The third part of the book was a direction that we took based on the kids' interest. They wanted to look at their own, they wanted to become experts. So that was really fun. We'd been at the park, they had been looking around for places where mini beasts might live, and they ended up taking a photograph of that spot that they found, a close-up photograph, and then we sat together and then they did a piece of artwork with chalk pastels to represent their photograph. And this is a really important part of inquiry for me, is sitting down and thinking about how art is linked to science. That act of looking very, very closely at something, of being a very keen and particular observer, and then the kids picked their own mini beast that they wanted to know about. And they picked everything from butterflies to an ichneumon wasp to different kinds of spiders. The range was fantastic. And they generated a huge number of questions that they thought it would be important for them to know as if they were really going to become experts. So, is my mini beast poisonous? How is it poisonous? How does my mini beast eat? Does it have teeth? How does my mini beast smell? So way too many questions to just start us off. So we then at the park we just sat down under a tree and we had a big conversation about which would be the few questions that it would be really important to start with. How do we ground ourselves in those questions? So they ended up being very clear that they wanted 4 different questions. that was going to go home as homework. It was going to be homework that we were going to ask their parents or caregivers or older siblings to help them with, knowing that they would probably have to go to the internet to get some of these answers. So here are the 4 questions they thought they should start with. Where does my mini beast live? Where does it make or find its home, nest or burrow? What does it eat? And how does it find or hunt for its food? And then together we did more research in the class that was now more specific to the creature that they were looking at, and even more specific information. And of course, using art again to both illustrate their understanding and as a way for me to archive some of the many things that they've learned. It's good to eat. They can also taste through their antennae, which is very strange.
Elias, those are 2 healthy.
Elias is wondering if it would be
and then that's the CN tower, and then
his...
that.
And today, it's all put together. It took me a while, but I think they were really thrilled to finally get a chance. They've been asking, when do we get to take it home? And today's the day.